enough of that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back once again for another week of Monday night action from the Slydog Racing League. We're here from rounds 11 and 12. Tonight we've got Canada and Singapore, so qualifying in Canada tonight. We're about to start that right now. Let me know if you can hear me, because I haven't actually checked the audio. In fact, if you just bear with me, I'll do that now. Save everyone else having to do the job. We're all good. So, just before we start qualifying then, let's have a little look at exactly where we were last week. And we were in Mexico and France. So the first race last week, Mexico started, it was a fantastic race, to be fair. There was a lot of action going on all throughout the qualifying session, some last minute pole snitching, and it was just carnage from the get-go. We saw a lap 1 incident into turn 1 involving Preston Mixer and Slydog. I think Preston Mixer just misbraked and tapped the rear end of the AlphaTauri after a fantastic start, and unfortunately along the way he collected Grant and Trem as well. So it ended that race with Slydog taking the win, which done him a massive favour in the Drivers' Championship, trying to reduce that deficit to Grant. But unfortunately for him, Grant bit back, and he took the win in France with a fantastic performance once again. So there we are, up to date with last week's results. And if we have a little look at the current standings, we have now got a gap beginning to build. 32-point lead now for Grant. He's on 135 points at the top of the championship. Second goes away of Chatty Duck, and still sitting there in third is Lanocam in the Renault. He had another good week last week. Mad Max trying to catch him on 67 points in fourth, but he is level on points with James Punt, and just behind the second Renault of Preston Mixer. Looking down to the constructors, it's been a long day. Constructors' Championship, we see Williams out in front on 172 points, AlphaTauri following closely behind with 170, and Renault sitting in the third place on the podium on 142. Just dropping back a little bit from there, we've got Racing Point sitting in fourth with 89, and Ferrari with 85. So there's some battles to be had there in the constructors. 85 points for Ferrari to 89 points of the Racing Point. We'll see what Dunners and Mad Max can do tonight. Now, unfortunately, you'll see a few of the guys on the left-hand side of the screen there have actually retired from the session. That's because they've received poly bans for either being a little bit late to the check-in or not checking in at all. So they will be suffering quali bans and starting from the rear of the grid. Let's have a little look at exactly what's going on out there right now. We see a few drivers on their out lap. So we've got Butters, James Punt, Chatty Duck, Grant and Trem all on their out lap. So we'll have a little look. Here we go. We'll ride on board with Chatty Duck as we can see Canada very, very damp. I was going to call, in fact I called this to myself earlier on, and Tremor's retired from the session as well. Don't quite know what's happened there. I don't know if we can catch anything from that. Is it going to be Grant going to be coming up behind him? I couldn't quite tell if there was any damage there for Trem, but unfortunate start for him if that is indeed the case. But yeah, I was about to say that you know, Canada has the potential to be a very, very wet race. So Grant is the first man to start his flying lap, so we'll ride on board with him and see exactly how he's got to fare up on these intermediate tyres around here. Can get very, very slippery. It's a borderline circuit, very much similar layout in a sense to a street circuit with very minimal runoff, so you don't want to make a mistake, but to carry the speed you need to use the whole width of the circuit itself, so all the way out to the lines. But you can see there's quite a fair amount of areas where you don't want to be putting that car. For example, there on the exit left-hand side, you'll see you're just going to go straight into the wall. We see another retirement from the session. That's Willis retiring now. We've got 14 minutes remaining in this short qualifying session, so unless a few of these guys have just thought, I'm not going to bother qualifying in the rain, I'm going to see exactly where I can end up. And we ride down on board with Grant to the hairpin just as he heads into sector 3 down this long drag of a straight, very reminiscent to a degree of Baku in that sense, with the chicane at the end of it there just for good measure to just maybe slow drivers down as they head towards the pit lane. It's not a bad circuit actually, Canada. I quite enjoy it. There's a bit of a knack to it, and equally Singapore as well. So we've got two very, very tight circuits and very unforgiving circuits as well, and there's quite a high possibility that we could also see maybe a bit of rain in Singapore. So Grant sets the benchmark time of 1:21.5, and let's see who's going to be next across the line. I think it's going to be Chatty Duck, who goes across the line and sets a 1:23.3, so some work to be doing there. A little bit of time to make up, but unfortunately in these conditions it can be a bit difficult on a circuit like this to get the power down. You've got some nice straights there that you want to really capitalise on and get the power down, but obviously if you get the power down a bit too early, you're just going to end up spinning your rear wheels up, so you don't want to be doing that too much. You want to just be sort of looking after the car, going easy. I always find that if I'm trying to go a bit too quick, I end up accidentally slowing myself down in the process. So we see James Punt currently on his out lap. Grant looks to be on a cool down lap. So Grant and Chatty Duck, the only two so far to set a time. We see Error 6 has joined the session. He is now on his out lap in his Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how he fares up in these conditions. Trem hates this track. Oh, well, was it a retirement, Trem? Did you? I don't know. I didn't see if you had any damage. I was trying to work it out, but unfortunately, just couldn't quite tell from the angle. So let us know what happened there. Actually, that'd be quite interesting to know. Grant, meanwhile, betters his time with a 1:20.8. So that cool down lap as such was not. I think it was. As we just see Error 6 just taking it a bit wide at the hairpin there, clipping the wall. He hasn't invalidated, so I say he hasn't invalidated. He's on an out lap, but it doesn't seem to have done much damage. We'll just get a little cinematic view, see if he's still got his wing intact. I don't know if he does, so we'll probably see him dive down into the pit lane. Maybe. No, he's going to go for a lap with no end plate. I think he's just trying to set a time. Any time is better than no time, especially at the minute when you can see the amount of retirements we've had from the session so far. A lot of guys thinking, you know what, we're gonna roll with it. We're going to see what happens. Yes, indeed, we're at the Canadian Grand Prix. I forgot his setup. Hit the wall first corner, retired in pits. That is unfortunate there. That is unfortunate. We see Preston Mixer and Dunners now, the last two drivers to get on their out laps. So there we go. They're out. Dan currently on a flying lap, if you can call these flying laps. Obviously in these conditions, you've got to take it quite easy on the car. So we see that Dan's out, but meanwhile we've got some guys who will be crossing the line ever so soon. So we've got, I think that Chatty Duck will be the first driver to come across the line. So let's just stick with this pack for a minute and see exactly what they set. Nope, Chatty's not doing anything. Butters diving into the pit lane. So James Punt may well be the next driver to set a time. I think he will, as he comes across the last chicane, uses the width, gets the power down nicely in that Alpha Tauri, and he puts himself third with a 1:22.8. So top three times in there now. The next driver to, bit of a slide there as we see Dunners running the full wet tyre. So currently the only driver I think to be running the full wet tyre this evening so far. And Error 6 sets himself a 1:26.6. So he's got a time on the board which he'll be happy about. He's got his name up there. And we see now Dunners beginning his flying lap. So it'll be interesting to see how well he does on these wets. It looks fairly damp out there, so it could well work. Obviously, if it's not quite the right condition for it, he will be suffering with a lack of grip. As you can see, he's just suffering with a bit of understeer there. He's just trying to turn the car in, but it just doesn't seem to want to go. So we'll ride on board with him for a couple of minutes. But there we go. This is what we needed to know. Brian's chirped in here with he's hoping to make some positions in the race, but it's gonna be dry for the race supposedly. So this makes it quite interesting. So we could have a real shuffled up quali here for the next 10 minutes or so, but we could have a really interesting race on our hands with people being somewhat out of position. Good evening, Aaron. How are we looking for tonight? How come 6 people out already? Quali bands. People tend to pick up a quali band if they don't check in at the right time for the races, or they're a little bit late on the check-in. It's it's one of those things, one of them rules. We have to play by them rules, and I think it's fair enough. But yeah, so as I say, it will shuffle the grid around a fair amount. So Dunners sets himself a 1:24.8 on those full wet tyres. So at the moment, maybe in quali, they will be the way to go. Remember, if it's a dry race, we will be having essentially a free tyre choice to a degree. So these guys will be looking to just see what suits them best. And obviously, Dunner's feeling quite comfortable there, or as comfortable as he can do on those wets. So he has gone with that, and it's seemingly paid off to a degree. He's got himself a valid time on the board, as we see a lot of those drivers who have currently set times in the pit lane. Pressing Mixer is the only man who's out at the moment, and Butters also is just starting his final lap. So let's cut down to him and have a little look at what he's doing. And in fact, I think, if I'm right in saying, it was Dunners, and now Era 6 has gone out on the full wets as well. So maybe he was keeping an eye on that and thinking to himself in that Mercedes, you know what, full wets could well be the way to go here for this session. His best lap, however, set on the intermediates, as we saw. So let's ride on board then. Let's have a little look at how Butters is doing. You can see the car snaking around those chicanes there through into Sector 2 as he goes down what would be the first DRS zone, essentially, of the lap. Canada, a circuit that does have 2 DRS zones, or 3 DRS zones, I should say, 2 of which are linked on those straights. You can see bottom right of the screen, but he seems to be going quickest. He's set the fastest Sector 2 at the moment, so let's see exactly how he gets on as he gets the exit out of the hairpin and heads down onto the straight. He's going to want a nice, clean uptake of the power there to try and get that racing point up to speed as quick as he can. So the other thing we need to mention as well then is that, in fact, we'll do that in a sec. He's just about to come across the line then. So Butters is going to have a time of a 1:21.8, so a fantastic lap. He's had a couple of absolutely brilliant quali sessions in the last couple of weeks here. So Butters setting himself a 1:21.8. So he's quite far ahead of the 2 AlphaTauri guys there. And he's a second off of Grant at the moment. Obviously we're running the realistic performance, however I do sometimes find that the wet conditions can even it out a little bit as well. So Dunner's now on another flying lap, it would seem, or a cool down lap of sorts. We'll see exactly where he goes if he dives into the pit lane, as we've got a fair few guys on their out lap at the moment. So let's catch up with James Punt and see how he's doing. He's on his out lap, so he'll be looking to start a flying lap in that AlphaTauri and maybe better his teammate and try and get himself further up the order. A fair few guys missing tonight as well, it should be said. We're 13 drivers this week, very similar to last week. Got to remember, it's summer holidays, so there's going to be a fair amount of people doing various summer activities of sorts. So not everyone can make every race week, unfortunately, at the moment. But we do the best with what we can, and we know that not many of these guys, they don't like to miss the race nights, but unfortunately sometimes life gets in the way a little bit. So there we go, as we see James running slightly deep into that chicane. That will slightly compromise the pace he can pick up throughout. So as he comes down past a Mercedes that seems to have slowed right down for him. I think that might have been Era 6. Yes, it was. Looks like he might have some damage, or he might well be struggling on those full wet tyres. Anyway, let's jump back to how James is doing on those intermediates currently as he heads round the hairpin into Sector 3 down towards what would be the second DRS zone, and hopefully will be for the race if what Brian says is correct and we have a wet, dry race. That could be, I must admit, that will make it a lot more exciting to have a dry race. It's always good to see what people can bring to the party around here. Anyway, Punty will cross the line and he will put that AlphaTauri above his teammate, so bettering his time by 0.4 of a second. And he goes with a 1:22.3. 4 minutes remaining then, 4.5 minutes remaining of this qualifying session. Not sure if we're going to see many more movers. It'd be interesting to see if we do get a lot of movements. Bearing in mind we've got 7 guys currently of the 13, so pretty much half of the field running at the moment. So as everyone currently setting these times will be within that top 7, and of course they're going to get their names read out at the start and everything. It's going to be exciting. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, whoever's watching, feel free to sing them in the chat. We'll answer them as quick as I can and as best as I can. If you have any questions about what's going on and how the championship's going. Obviously, I went through the championship standings earlier on, but if you weren't there, then I'm more than happy to go through that again. So it looks like most of the guys at the moment are on a cool-down lap or are out in the pits or on an out lap. It looks like Preston Mixer may well actually be on a flying lap here, so we'll sit on board with him in his Renault. He had a cracking start last week, as I said earlier on in Mexico. He had a brilliant start, threaded the needle between Chatty Duck and Grant, and actually had a brilliant run down into turn 1, but unfortunately just outbraked himself, turned the Renault round, and collected Grant and Trem at the same sort of time. Any beer chat? Or are you off the beer? Of course I'm not off the beers. Of course I'm not off the beers. No, there will be a beer chat. Unfortunately, I'm cutting down on the beers, so we're only going to go for the one beer tonight. But that's also because I've got to talk so much shit that I don't have time to drink to. So we'll get onto that soon. It is a special. It's a Buxton brewery, so you can hear more about that later. Anyway, meanwhile, back to the action on the circuit. We have Pressing Mixer diving into the pit lane. So he's abandoned that lap, wasn't happy with the way it was going, didn't think he was going to beat his time. So anyway, further back we see that Grant looks like he's invalidated that lap, so he won't be posting a time this time round. But we can see just behind him, I shouldn't scroll that fast really, it's a messy camera work, I do apologise. We see Error 6 beginning another flying lap. He has dropped back onto the inters, so maybe those the full wets weren't the tyre for him, as we see him just take a nice easy line round turn 1 and get the power down, trying not to spin those wheels up. The AlphaTauri gets out of the way to allow him through on this flyer, and he's using all the width of the track quite nicely there. Obviously the curbs once again becoming quite a dangerous beast at this point in the session, because they are very damp. Unfortunately, he has just overshot that corner there and finds himself slightly cutting the grass, so we'll rejoin him a bit later on and see exactly how he's getting on. But anyway, let's have a little look at Dunners. Let's go and see exactly what he's up to out there at the moment. So we can see he seems to be on a flying lap, very similar point to where we've just seen Era 6 go deep and hit the grass, but nice lines around there through him. So this is his first lap out on those intermediate tyres. It's not looking as wet as it was at the start of the session, so probably the tyre of choice will be the intermediate now, by far the quicker tyre. That's probably because Tom isn't here. I haven't got the time to drink too. But, you know, we'll do what we can. We'll see what we can do. Meanwhile, Grant now setting a 1:19.7, so he's piling the laps in. He's guaranteeing himself that pole position. He wants to get this race underway and try and get another win under his belt, because for him, if it's going to be a dry race, he could find himself struggling and being almost a sitting duck on these straights in that Williams. So he's going to want to get away down the road as quick as he can for the first couple of laps before DRS is active, as we see Dunners crosses the line with a 1:22.9, so that jumps him ahead of Pressing Mixer and moves him up to P5 as it stands. So a good lap from him. He's obviously found something there on those intermediate tyres towards the end of the session, but it looks like he might just get the chance to get another flying lap in. So qualifying session over now. Pressing Mixer and Butters have finished. Grant has invalidated his next lap round. Chatty Duck is on, I assume, a cool down lap there of sorts. Now James Punt could well be on for a potential flyer. As we see him head down the back straight of Sector 3. Will he be able to better his time in the dying seconds of qualifying, as we see the Williams of Grant just diving into the pit lane, getting out of the way. The AlphaTauri goes round the final chicane down towards the timing line. Let's ride on board and see exactly what he can do. He sets himself a 1:21.6, so 7/10 better than his last effort. And unfortunately not enough to move him up, because his teammate's setting a 1:21.4, so just a couple of tenths off the pace there of his teammate in the other AlphaTauri. Dunners then will be the next to cross the line and the final man to finish his qualifying session, so he'll cross the line, and he is looking like he's going to set a not a bad time, to be fair. He's bettered his time by 4/10, not quite enough to better his position on the grid, but by far gets himself a few brownie points there. 4/10 quicker than his previous record there. So there we go then. That is on one screen how the grid will look for this evening. Obviously, we'll go through that all in a little bit in the special way. But you'll see that we've got Grant out there on pole, followed by Butters taking P2, and P3 goes to Chatty Duck. So Grant making quite a fantastic effort there, 1.3 seconds faster than second place. So he's had an absolutely brilliant session there. We know he likes the wet, and we also know from last season he does quite like Singapore as well. So this could be a good evening for him to really excel in the championship. Chatty Duck will want to try and slow that down though, so be prepared. We could see quite the battle on the circuit over the next 20 minutes or so. So we'll get involved. We'll see what's going to happen. I'll try and keep up with as much of the action as I can. As you can see, yes, indeed, it is dry. In fact, it's beautifully sunny out there. So fantastic conditions for what should be a really exciting race. Right now, the drivers will just be setting their cars up, getting everything set right. As you can see, they'll be making their tyre choices because they've essentially got a free tyre choice now, which will add another exciting element to this race. See how strategy plays into the hands of a lot of drivers. A bit more about the circuit though. It's a tough call really on this track because it can be quite heavy on tyre degradation, but equally not as much as some other circuits out there. A lot of it is all dependent on corner exits here because there's a lot of a lot slower corners than some of the other circuits out there like Bahrain and Holland and stuff. So I think tyre degradation will play a factor, but not as majorly as maybe certain other circuits that we've had on the calendar so far. I certainly think Mexico was one last week where degradation was going to be quite a hefty thing on the softs, but maybe not so much here. My experience here is a little bit limited, but I must admit it has been in the past quite a fun circuit to drive. Overtaking opportunities, expect them out of the DRS zones, obviously down that back straight and leading up towards the hairpin. So there's plenty of exciting moments to be seen around this circuit. You can expect something to turn. In fact, every turn almost has an overtaking opportunity. It just depends how big your bollocks are as to whether you're going to sling a wheel up the inside and brave it, because just look at the width there. Not a lot of runoff really, is there? So the predicted strategy is a one-stop naturally between laps 7 and 12, soft to medium, medium to soft, or obviously potentially if you have an issue early doors, you may well jump onto those hards because it is an 18-lap race for a 25%er. So it's quite a lengthy race, similar length to the Netherlands, but we shall see exactly what will happen here. So let's run you then through your top 10 for this evening for round 11 of the Slydog Racing League. So your grid for this evening: P1 goes the way of Grant, P2 alongside him on the front row of the grid. You see Butters in that racing point, and the second row of the grid starts with the first of the two Alpha Tauris. It's Chatty Duck. Lining up P4 alongside him on that second row is James Punt, and fifth it's Dunners in the first of the Ferraris. Sixth goes the way of the first Renault Express in Mixer, and seventh, his best qualifying effort yet, it's Error 6 in that Mercedes. Eighth goes the way of Mad Max in the second of the Ferraris. Ninth, the first of the Red Bulls, in fact the only Red Bull this evening, Nick Willis. And 10th, rounding out your top 10 for this evening, is B Wheeler. As all the drivers now take their positions in their boxes, we get ready for those lights and we will prepare ourselves for round 11 of the Slydog Racing League. What strategy would I be running? That's an interesting one actually. What strategy would I'd probably... It depends where you start on the grid. I think a lot of the guys starting down the front are going to want to look at the soft tyres. As you can see, let's skip all the way forwards to see if we can get a good view at the start as we get 4, 5 lights will be. And it's lights out and away we go here for round 11 in Canada. Grant covering the line quite nicely. As I was saying, a lot of the front runners there you can see run the soft tyres. So you can just try and catch a glimpse of what's happening further back. Let's run off the rear wing of James Chatty Duck there, sorry. In fact, it doesn't seem to be, he seems to be ghosting at the minute, so he may have some issues. But let's have a little look at exactly how it's all lining up. I think the ordering is swapping around a little bit as we file through Sector 1, so just bear with us on that one. But you can see, Tom, that most of the guys at the front there running the soft tyre, they want to get a real nice, quick, sharp start, really, you know, get racy early on. Grant, like I said earlier on in qualifying, will want to disappear down the road and try and extend his lead as quickly as he can, obviously with the performance deficit of that Williams. And in fact, we may well see that here. Obviously that will be amplified with DRS if Butters can stick with him, but he's going to want to try and get in the slipstream of that Williams to see if he can actually close it down, because Grant, obviously we know exactly how technical he is round the corners. Let's have a little look then at what people have got fitted. I can expect most of the guys down the back of the pack will have the mediums on. Yep, so we've got Albert, Lannard, Wheeler, Willis, Mad Max and Dunners all on the medium tyre. Only a few guys at the back there starting on the softs. Unfortunate start there for Error 6. Must have had a bit of a moment and has lost a few places because he was up on in P7 at the start, so he's lost a fair amount of places. Maybe had a little moment coming through the first lap. So let's try and flick through and see what battles we have going on. So we've got Mad Max here then. We'll ride on board with him as he chases down his teammate Dunners, who is in fact on the tail of Pressing Mixer in that Renault. Let's clear the tyre and the pit stops details out of the way and have a little look at some positions then. So the big mover then really from the start there is Trem, up 4 places from the start. So he's had an absolutely brilliant start running down into turn 1, as we see both the Ferraris now diving down towards the end of lap 2. Looks like Mad Max has got the move done. He had a fantastic exit off of that hairpin. His teammate will let him through and see if they can catch Pressing Mixer. Just behind you can see Nick really pushing that Red Bull to try and catch the Ferrari up. Let's have a little look at this battle as we ride on board with him now. DRS enabled this lap, and as you can see actually at the front, Butters is still within DRS range of Grant. So we're going to have a quick skip back up to the front of the grid and we will look exactly what's going on there. Grant now firing through as they're about to hit the first DRS zone. So this is where you could really see that performance deficit from the Williams as we ride off the rear wing, and we can see Butters closing down somewhat onto the gearbox of Grant's Williams there. Not quite as much as he'd have hoped, but you've got to remember this next DRS zone, it's a long drag, so it depends on the exit if you can get the power down nicely. As you can see, Grant slightly short shift in there, trying to not light those rear wheels up, not compromise the exit off of that corner as such. But you can see, look at the pace that Racing Point has got on him. He's going to be close to making a move and just drag himself in on the back of that Williams. So this is why Grant will have wanted to run that soft tyre and get away, because look, the second DRS zone, Butters comes straight through and will get the move done before turn 1. So there is the move for the lead. Grant switches to the outside. Butters holds that inside line, just trying to cover him off, gives the Williams driver some space, but he will get the move done on the exit of turn 2. And they file down through the first chicane. Butters now got to hold it together. Will he be able to pull away from the Williams? Because Grant is sticking to him like flies round shit right now. But what will that performance deficit be like with the DRS now? Because we've got to remember, Butters is now going to be potentially a sitting duck. Grant with DRS is all over the gearbox of that Racing Point. Let's ride on board and see if he's looking for every single opportunity he can. Butters looks like he runs a little bit wider than he would have liked off the exit of that corner there. But they'll hair down towards this tight right-hand hairpin. Who's going to get the better exit here? Looks like Butters has got the power down on that Racing Point pretty well, but look at Grant. He's already got the drive before the DRS zone, so the move will happen again, and they will trade places once more, and Grant will get the DRS going into the next zone. So Butters files in behind, tries to maybe pick up a little bit of the slipstream, try and just stay on the back of that Williams. As you can see already, he's dropped 6/10 back from it, because by dropping behind the Williams, he's picked up the DRS and has allowed himself to catapult back through into P1. A couple of penalties on the board then for James Punt and Mad Max. We're going to skip down the order now, and we're going to have a little look between Dunners and Willis, because there was the battle going on there, and you can see there's quite the battle pack forming up here at the moment. Go on Butters, says Doggy. Fair play. I mean, it's some great racing. We'll catch up with them in a minute. We'll just have a little gander at what we've got going on in the mid-pack. Dunners still trying to defend desperately from that Red Bull. Let's look at the back. You can see Nick looking desperate to get past Dunners and catch up with Trem, who's disappeared up the road because Dunners has lost the position. Nick moving to the outside. Will he get enough to go all the way round the outside of the hairpin? He won't need to, because he's got the move done early doors, but everyone closing up. Was there a little bit of contact behind from Albert on the back of Lanocam? Not quite sure there. We'll have to see what happens after the race with that one. But looking further back, Wheeler and Albert both running side by side. Wheeler in the McLaren does have the DRS as well, though. They are sitting so close together right now, but it's going to be Wheeler's position. Albert diving into the pit lane. Potentially there was a little bit of contact there, maybe causing some damage. But anyway, we will see. Oh, hello. We've also missed the fact that Dunners has lost out to Lanocam as well. So Lanocam in that Renault has managed to get past the Ferrari in the DRS zone, and the next man behind him is Wheeler. So Wheeler's now looking to buy in on this little pack, as well as they all snake through into Sector 2. They're all running quite close together. They're all running as one. But anyway, let's skip back up to the top and just see what's happening at the front end, because there still is quite the close gap there between Butters and Grant, although it has extended itself out a little bit. I'm not sure if Butters will have the DRS now, so this could be the moment that Grant was waiting for, that moment that he gets out of that 1 second window, because look, Butters does not have the DRS now running down into this back straight. So from that perspective, the performance deficit of the Williams to a degree isn't as harsh, but there's contact there between Chatty Duck and Butters as he has to cut the corner. That seemed like an awful amount of damage as Chatty Duck obviously missed his braking point to a degree there, tearing into the rear end of the racing point. I'm just going to have a little look at this back on the replay. It is just a missed braking, and Butters lucky to hold it there, really, as he bounced across the curves there straight over that nicely concreted section. Thank Christ that wasn't grass, because else you'd have just been a passenger, and I think that would have been race over for him. But nevertheless, he sticks to the rear end of that Williams, and the Williams is still struggling somewhat to escape the clutches of that racing point. Let's have a little look further down the order again then, because we see M. Willis, the teammate of Woolsey, who is unfortunately not with us tonight, but I think he'll be watching the stream, chasing down Lanocam. So the Renault there trying to escape the clutches of the Red Bull hasn't yet got far enough up the road to do so, because Nick will have the DRS on the exit of this turn. How well can he put the power down? He's short shifting up. The ERS lights up on the steering wheel, so he's giving it everything he's got. As you can see behind, B. Wheeler has got the move done on Dunners in that Ferrari. But look, they're side by side again. Dunners looking to try and make a move down into the final couple of turns. He files back in behind the McLaren. Can't get it done this time. What's the exit going to be like? He's dropped quite a way back. I think he had to brake quite heavily going into that corner there just to avoid any potential contact. Further up the order then, we can see Nick still attacking the rear of that Renault, just trying to get himself up. But meanwhile, we can see obviously Chatty Duck having had to dive in the pit lane for a wing change, and obviously his usual, or not his mandatory stop as such, has dropped down the order to P11. See an extra amount of time added on for that pit stop because of the wing change. That promotes his teammate James Punt and Mad Max up a couple of places. Butters also dropping down the order there. I think, has he been in the pit lane there? I might have missed that one there. We'll try and piece that one together. In fact, we can piece that one together. Let's have a little look at your pit stop information. So let's get those position changes off. Yep, Butters has made an earlier stop, so he's blinked first. Grant has now dived into the pit lane, So we shall see exactly where he comes out. He looks like he's a fair old way ahead, but Butters was running P2 at the point of the stop. So let's see if diving himself out into the traffic has made a difference. As we can see, he now heads down towards the timing line. It's gonna be close. Grant on the pit exit. I think Butters may well have it done here, so a strategy change there may well have worked wonders. Not quite, because Grant comes out just ahead and just ahead of Dunners as well, so he's got himself a car between the two of them. So your net P1 and 2 drivers are just separated by that Ferrari. Butters is going to want to clear that as quickly as he can, but he may well use it as a bit of a weapon, because if that gap is slightly more than a second, he will be able to pick up the DRS from the back end of the prancing horse that is sitting just ahead of him, who is actually obviously going to carry a bit of pace towards Grant, he would hope, as they head down towards that hairpin. So we expect to potentially see some moves up here. Up ahead we can see Wheeler looking to attack the Red Bull of Nick now. He's dropped a little bit further back than he would have liked, and he's now got Grant within DRS range behind him. Grant without the DRS range at the pickup point though, but you can see just behind Butters getting the move done on the Ferrari in that DRS zone, so now he can chase down the Williams. Let's see how quickly he can pull up onto the rear of the Williams up ahead, and he looks to be doing it fairly quick. We've got to remember Grant didn't have DRS as he went down into sector 3. Butters did, so he's going to get it for both of the segments of DRS, as you can see in the track map on the bottom right of the screen, and he will try and file down and catch up Grant as quickly as he can. He now has Wheeler between the pair of them. Wheeler yet to stop. So let's carry on and have another little look further at the pit stops. I know a few other guys have stopped. So your drivers to stop now are Mad Max, Slydog and Wheeler. So expect Wheeler to probably come in this lap and run maybe 8 laps on the softs, try and excel a bit of pace out of those soft tyres for the final stint. He's running in P4 at the moment, so we'll see where that would put him on the exit. As we saw earlier on, he's hoping to make up a fair few positions this round. Butters dives towards the outside. He will get the move done on the McLaren, but unfortunately that drops his deficit back to Grant to 1.4 seconds. Wheeler jumping into the pit lane there, and Butters unfortunately picking himself up another penalty. So unfortunately for him, he's going to be slowed down or hindered ever so slightly with 6 seconds worth of penalties to Grant's 0 at the moment. Some cracking racing though. He's held on well so far, but we can also see that Slydog and Mad Max both staying out, trying to extend that medium tyre stint and possibly try and draw themselves a few positions through strategy. Anyway, we see another driver who's currently in the pit lane, is Error 6. He's slinging on some soft tyres from those mediums, having himself a quick wing change, and he's going to try and see if he can get himself up the order once again. Dunners has unfortunately dropped some places as well, so he's running P12 at the moment. Unfortunately, maybe Canada not quite the circuit for him. Let's look further up, and we can see this battle continues to burn on between Nick and Brian Wheeler. So these guys absolutely going for it. Nick looking very racy indeed, trying to chase down that McLaren there as they dive down into the hairpin. Wheeler looks to have gone a little wider than he would have liked. Maybe a brush with the wall on the exit there could hinder the exit pace. He's not going to have DRS. Grant, meanwhile, setting the fastest lap of the race with a 1 minute 12.2. And here we go. The move is now done for the Red Bull. So he will now continue up the road and chase down Albert in that Alfa Romeo, who sits just ahead of him. So Nick getting himself into the final point spot, but Albert looks like he's overtaken the Renault. No, he hasn't. I thought he might have just done him in the pit lane there, but unfortunately he hasn't. So Slydog has rejoined the circuit behind Mad Max, the guys that were leading momentarily in this race there. So we have ourselves a bit of a Renault Ferrari Renault sandwich going on. Some French bread with a little Italian bit of filling going on right there. Must shout out as well, happy birthday to Mad Max, who was 30 the other day. So I hope you're not feeling too old, buddy. And I'm rooting for you. I'm hoping you get a cracking result tonight. See, I'm nice to you on my streams. But anyway, let's ride on board with Mad Max then, as he chases down the Renault Pressing Mixer into the final DRS zone of Sector 3. Look at the pace of that Ferrari. He's in the slipstream. He's got to get the move done as they head down the straight. Pressing Mixer, we know, doesn't like to give the positions up, but I don't think he's going to have a lot of choice there because the pace of that Ferrari down the straight, and once again, this second DRS zone will allow him to complete the move and pull a bit of a gap as well. So that's the danger with this circuit, having the DRS zones laid out like that, because it's very similar. There's another circuit on the calendar it's very, very similar to, and I can't actually remember where it is. So if that comes to me, I'll let you know. Too nice. I know I am. I'm just a good guy. That's what it is. So we've got ourselves a quick moment. We'll ride on board at the moment with Trem, who currently chases down the AlphaTauri of Chatty Duck. So these guys in the racing points having themselves a fantastic race for the points this evening, both gaining themselves a fair few points, and Trem up 8 places as it stands. So he's had an absolutely brilliant race. Let's have a little look at the penalties as well. The penalty situation, unfortunately though, for the racing point lads, both sitting on 6 seconds, so that will drop the pair of them quite substantially down the order. Every driver has now stopped, but you see Trem looking to file in behind Chatty Duck. Big lock up there into the final corner from Chatty, but Trem not able to actually compromise on that just yet. Let's take a little look to my left, because we've got ourselves a Buxton Brewery here, Tom. It's a collaboration beer with a brewery called Lupulus. It's a Citra IPA. It comes in at 5.5%, and I must say it's a very sessionable beer. It's a very, very refreshing beer. Very citrusy hops in it, and it's quite a distinctive flavour of mangoes and lemons and all sorts of nice citrusy vibe. So quite a refreshing drink after a day like today, where it's been a bit muggy and a bit warm. So I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10 because I'm enjoying it when I get to drink it. Anyway, that was beer chat. It's very quick nowadays because we've got to get straight back to the action. As we can see, unfortunately for Error 6, he finds himself in the pit lane again, so it looks like he may well have been having a fight with a few more wolves out there on the circuit. Grant now picks himself up a 3-second time penalty, but the deficit now to Butters is 5 seconds, so that has opened up. Those medium tyres maybe not suited to the way Butters wants to drive that racing point. He hasn't quite been able to hang on. Maybe the traffic situation slowed him down a slight bit more than it did Grant to a degree. So unfortunately for him, a great race nonetheless, and it was fantastic to see him actually taking the fight there for a little bit. Meanwhile, further back down the order, we see the two AlphaTauri boys running 3rd and 4th respectively, just a second separating them, and also Trem sitting himself in quite quickly behind James Punt's AlphaTauri there. So Punty wanting to get a move on down the road to try and escape Trem and defend his position. He will obviously know that Trem has got time penalties, but I think James has as well. So let's take a little look and see how this could potentially affect the race. So I don't think it'll affect it from James Punt's perspective, because all 3 drivers behind from P5 to P7 have 6 seconds worth of penalties. So that will not affect him as such, but the man it will benefit will be Pressing Mixer in the second of the Renaults. You can see they're currently running P8. He may find himself gaining a few positions out of this as well. Anyway, we see Trem closing up onto the gearbox of James Punt's AlphaTauri, so we will ride on board. Let's take away all of that information. We've got Sector 3 yellow flag. It seems to have cleared now, so we will assume that's nothing too gnarly. Anyway, let's ride on board with Trem as he attacks the rear of this baby Red Bull. Right, so I'm going to call them now. Where from shop-wise? How much are we chatting? I do love an ale. Well, I believe, actually, this one was from Tesco's. I think I found it in Tesco's. We've got a new beer shop opened up round our way. I'm yet to try it, but I'll let you know what it's like when I do try it. But I think this was just one of their craft beers I could see in Tesco's. There was there's a fair old few in there. I can highly recommend any made by a brewery called Vocation. They tend to do a series, some, I think, two of them called Love and Hate, Life and Death, and Pride and Joy. Those sorts of beers, very, very, very good beers then as well. So I'd highly recommend those. But let's just skip back to the action, because look, Trem looking to make the move on James Punt as they head down towards turn one. He's got half the car up the inside. He's maybe pushing it a little bit tight there as the car drifts to the outside. There's a little bit of contact, but nothing too major. Both of them getting a great exit. Trem looking to try and take a run up the inside yet again at the chicane. Can't quite do it. Hasn't got enough of a run on the AlphaTauri. James holding that car together well. A very, very defensive drive, but we've seen that Trem obviously here is enjoying Canada. He's up 8 places, I believe, at the moment. We'll have a look. Yes, 8 places at the minute. So he's made a lot of progress this evening. Unfortunate about the penalties, however, but he seems to have now dropped back ever so slightly from the AlphaTauri, closing under braking though into that hairpin as they now dive down towards sector 3 into the DRS zone. The wing opens up and he will now continue to chase that AlphaTauri. Will we see more turn 1 action? Let's have a little look. Let's ride on board there with James as he dives out of the final corner down towards the timing line to start the final lap of round 11. You think you've seen them beers? They're well worth a go, man. Well worth a go. I highly recommend them. Some of my favourites that I've tried personally when we've been doing beer chat, so definitely recommend. Meanwhile, we see that, in fact, Grant has had a moment. We've missed it, but I saw there was something stopped on the circuit, and Grant has had a moment, and he's lost half his wing on that Williams, and look who's coming up behind now. It's Butters and Chatty Duck. Chatty Duck getting the move done on Butters up the inside. Last lap action. Let's just stick with it and see what happens, because Chatty Duck's just stolen second place away from Butters, and obviously this championship battle so far between Grant and Chatty is going to be absolutely huge if Chatty can get a win here in Canada as they now head down towards the final DRS zone. Let's have a little look at what Chatty can do. Is he going to be able to close up enough on the DRS zone? Remember, Grant will be hindered with that front end damage. He seemed to have taken a spin going out of one of the chicanes on the exit, but I think he's going to have enough to do it as he just about gets it. But remember that penalty? It's come back to bite him now, because he finds himself sitting P2 behind Chatty Duck, who takes the win here in round 11. Holy monkeys, we don't see that very often. It's such a shame that we missed it. I just saw what looked to be the blob of a Williams on the track map there, going absolutely nowhere. But wow, last lap action here in Canada as Chatty Duck takes round 11, followed by Grant, and in third place James Punt. So the AlphaTauri guys doing absolute wonders for their Constructors' Championship, because remember earlier on in the stream I was just running through the standings, and Williams had a 2-point lead at the top of the Constructors' table to AlphaTauri. So this will preliminarily put AlphaTauri at the top of the Constructors. What a race. It sort of slowed down in the middle. I think people sort of settled in, but all of a sudden that kicked off. That really kicked off. Cracking stuff. And guess what? We've got all of the round 12 to come. So here we go. Here are your results for round 11. P1 goes the way of Chatty Duck in the end with that last lap drama from Grant, who did have the buffer there, but unfortunately with a spin there, lost out on that win. So P2 goes the way of Grant. P3 finishing off the podium, it's James Punt in the second of the AlphaTauris. P4, Trem finds himself up from P13 to P4. So a fantastic drive from him, making up many spots, especially on that first lap. A cracking start on the first lap here. P5 goes the way of Preston Mixer in the Renault, and 6th the way of Mad Max in that Ferrari, up from 8th. 7th goes the way of Butters, 8th to Lanocam, and 9th to B Wheeler in the McLaren, who unfortunately just made up the one position there this evening, but one is better than none. Albert finishes in 10th, Nick in 11th, Dunners 12th, and rounding it out the grid, you see Era 6 there in the Mercedes, who had an unfortunate race there Luck just wasn't winning this evening, it would seem, for that round. But we will see exactly what we can do here in Singapore. So remember, it's going to be a reverse grid in Singapore. So we will see that Mercedes starting on pole, Chatty, Duck and Grant both starting from the back. And Singapore being a street circuit is going to be an exciting one to watch because there's not many overtaking spots. And we will see exactly what they can do. But for the meantime, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to go drink some more beer. And I'll be back with you very shortly. Please stay with us. I think round 12 is going to be an absolute belter. And we are back. See, it's at that point I'd probably be trying to show some highlights from race 1, but unfortunately we don't quite have the technology to do that yet. I wish we did. Believe me, I wish we had some cool montages going on there, but we don't. Instead, we can prepare ourselves for round 12 of the Slydog Racing League here in Singapore. The drivers still just getting themselves ready. We've just seen all the action from round 11 in Canada, and my God, was it quite explosive at the end. There was Butters putting the fight to Grant early on, shifting places for the lead, but unfortunately he couldn't quite capitalise at the end when Grant made a very rare mistake on the exit of the chicane in sector 2. Butters found himself in the clutches of Chatty Duck and the Alpha Tauri, who just managed to snatch it away from him, but obviously penalties coming into effect there meant that unfortunately Butters slipped down the order. It probably should also be said that the driver of the day for that round goes to Trem for a fantastic jump of positions there in Canada. He was up 8 places after messing his setup up in qualifying and retiring in qualifying. He made himself up 8 places and found himself finishing P4. So great drive from him. As you can see there, the driver's now readying up for the next round, so we will be underway very shortly. Great to see that you've all sort of stayed with us. As usual, put stuff in the chat if you want to have a say. Oh, I found a little button here, look. Oh, I can add options and stuff. Oh, look at that. Let's go for a poll. Let's go for a poll. Let's see if we can sort this out in the chat. Let's see how this works, because we've got a couple of seconds to sort this out. Let's see how we do there. Let's take that away and let's ask the community. There we go. So there's a poll somewhere running somehow. I don't quite know where that disappeared to. Apparently, so get voting and I'll see if there's a... Here we go. So there's a poll up now with a random question. So those of you that are watching, sting your votes in. We've got to remember it's a reverse grid, so both Grant and Chatty Duck will be starting from the rear of the grid. We've got some answers on the board already. I'll keep this poll running until the very start of the race, and we will see what people have said. So we've got a few votes in. We've got a few votes coming in now. But at the minute, the majority of them are saying no. So a lot of doubters out there. We obviously know Singapore street circuit. It's a tight circuit. Not very many overtaking opportunities. Your main one's going to be looking down into turn 1 and possibly going down towards the hairpin over the bridge. If you've got the right line, you might be able to get a wider entry point, tighter on the exit, and get that power down nice and swift. We see Mrs. Punch join the chat as well for the first time in a while. Great to have you. Lots of ground to make up, yeah, indeed. He's going to have a lot of work on his plate, heavily strategy-based probably, but we will see exactly what he can do. He's going to have the 2 Alpha Tauris surrounding him as well, so depending on how defensive they can be going down into turn 1, obviously with the performance deficit as well, he's going to have a bit of work to do. But we shall see exactly what happens. We've got 20 seconds here before the drivers hit the grid for round 12. They're all just getting their setups ready. Another fact about this circuit, and we spoke to Grant about this last season, in fact, we had him on for an interview just before the round started. And this is one of the few circuits where you can actually underfuel the car in this game, because you can change the fueling levels. And obviously this is something, one of the league rules, that the drivers have to change their own fuel ratios. So you can actually underfuel the car and pretty much run the car in lean all the way through sector 3, the tighter section where you don't necessarily want to spin the rear wheels up. And and risk spinning the car into a wall, because you can see there's very, very little runoff once again. It's just walls all the way around. It is, of course, a street circuit. So you can, in fact, underfuel the car and still finish the race with a decent amount of pace. Obviously, you're then carrying less weight at the start as well. So weighing up the odds there, it might be an option for a few drivers here in the lesser performing cars to actually underfuel them at the start of the race. But anyway, let's have a little look at the grid for round 12 of the Slydog Racing League. So lining up for, I think, what is his first pole position here in this league, we see the Mercedes of Era 6. Alongside him on the front row, his actual brother is Dunners in the first of the two Ferraris. Lining up on the second row of the grid in P3, we see Nick in his Red Bull, and P4 goes the way of Albert. Row 3 of the grid, we see the McLaren of B. Wheeler, and alongside him for company, the Renault of Lanarkam. P7 goes the way of the first racing points, it's Butters, and P8, the second of the Ferraris, it's Mad Max. Ninth goes the way of Pressing Mixer, and to round out the top 10 for round 12, we see Trem in the second of the racing points. Following them, you have, of course, the two Alpha Towers. You have James Punt and Chatty Duck 13th. Grant starting between them in P12. So this race has all of the ingredients for a lot of excitement. The poll now is going to end. So the answer to the poll is no. Grant will not win this round. So a lot of you guys thinking that there's a lot of ground to make up and it's not going to be doable. So there we go. If you're watching, Grant, or if you're listening, it's game on, isn't it? It's game on. Anyway, the drivers now taken to the grid for round 12 as they all find their boxes. Let's get ourselves up the front there with the Ferrari, the Mercedes of Era 6. We won't get any other information on the screen other than the track map because, of course, it will all shuffle itself around. Anyway, we can see the lights there, top right. 3 of them are on, 4 of them are on, 5 lights all illuminated there above the streets of Singapore. They're out, and we are racing here for round 12 of the Slydog Racing League. Good getaway from the Ferrari of Dunners, but not as good as the Mercedes of Era 6, who goes slightly wide into turn 1. Looks like he's slightly lost it into turn 2. There's contact between the Ferrari as they all just about make it through safely. A big moment there for the Mercedes early doors as we ride on board with him looking off the rear wing. Is there any other carnage further back? Let's have a little scroll through and see what we can see as they all file down into the next section of this very tight circuit. No runoff here, remember, so you've got to pick your moves. There's a bit of front end plate go flying there. In fact, there's a lot of end plate further back down the field. Let's see if we can pick up some of that damage. We've got a Ferrari, I think that's Dunners, missing part of his end plate. There's a virtual safety car out now. So there's a Ferrari with damage. There's an Alpha Tauri of James Punt up to P6 already. He's had a fantastic start. And look at Grant up into 8th place, unscathed at the moment. So already positions being made up through damage from other drivers. Is the McLaren as well missing an end plate? I think Butters may have taken a little bit of damage there in that heavy braking zone. He's also missing his front left end plate as well, so a lot of damage. You'll see a lot of drivers diving into the pit lane, potentially under this VSC for the harder tyre. But meanwhile, the Mercedes of Era 6 still leads here midway round lap 1 of round 12 after a big moment into turn 1. He got very, very slippery. Aaron, I'll get you a beer if he wins. Game on. 100% in for that. James Punt, though, although we said he was up to 6th, he's unfortunately picked up a drive-through penalty for speeding under the virtual safety car. He has got damage as well in Alpha Tauri, so there's some contact there between the two of them. We're back racing now, and Grant already up to P5, so he is storming through the grid thanks to a hanging back to a degree and letting the other guys take on a little bit of damage early doors. Let's ride on board with the Ferrari of Mad Max then, who currently sees himself in P4, right on the gearbox of Lanarkam in that Renault, as he looks to try and make a move further up. Lanarkam just not quite getting the power down as he'd have liked there, spinning the rears up slightly, compromising the exit as they head down towards Sector 2. DRS zone, DRS is active. There's a slight love tap to the rear of Lanarkam there, it would seem. nothing to really unsettle that Renault too much, so they all file through rather safely, but Grant is now looming just behind them. I think the order has sorted itself out. I was mistaken. Grant is now not P5, he is currently P8. We'll just wait and see if that order sorts itself out. But meanwhile, it almost looks as well like error 6 may have gone in for a stop as well. Let's skip through and just see who's behind him. Yep, it is Dunners. So we knew Dunners would have come into the pits. It looks like error 6 has made himself an early stop under the VSC just to maybe try and get the strategy done. As we cut to Trem there, having a little bit of a fight with the inside of the wall of the Armco there. So let's just have a little look further up the order then. So we've got the strategy there at the bottom is a one stop. Obviously, take no notice of that at the minute because a lot of the drivers would have already come in for their stop. Albert then, it would seem, on the road, leads the way here through the streets of Singapore in that Alfa Romeo with N Willis second, the Renault of Lanelcam third, and Grant already up to fourth. Evening, Joseph. What's going on, mate? And Mark Donaldson, good evening. Come on, Nick. Well, we're rooting. We're rooting. P2 currently. He's had a great race in P1. He looked very racy in P1 in round 11. Sorry, he looked very racy indeed in Canada. So let's. This track seems a really hard one to get over. It is very limited places to make a move here in Singapore. Somewhat easier than Monaco. I'm going to go out there and say that massively easier than Monaco. You've got a lot more track width around here. You've also got better runs into the turns from the DRS zone, so you've got a couple of longer straights and some nicer areas to make the move. But I think it is just a case of picking the right moment to make a move. Really, from my experience around here, you're almost best off just piling the pressure on behind someone. If we just ride on board with Grant now, and in fact, let's look further back because we've got Mad Max in that Ferrari looking to make a move on the Renault as it stands at the minute. So from my experience, I find the best way to do it is just to put the pressure on the other drivers. You can close up on them as much as you like, let them know you're there, slide around in their rear view mirror a little bit and wait for them to maybe make a mistake, because it is a tight circuit. It is difficult to get the power down correctly in Sector 3, especially under this bridge section right here. A lot of issues there if you catch that inside curb, because they can be really, really slippery. Yeah, it's really waiting on other drivers to make that fatal mistake of feeling the pressure a little too much. So it all seems to have calmed down a little bit now as a few of the fielders sort of spread out following the early damage. A little bit of end plate going here, there and everywhere. But obviously on a circuit like this, you're going to want all the downforce you can get, because you do need to really make those corners. It is so unforgiving. The Armco is so tight to the edge of the track limits that there is no room for error around any of these corners here in Singapore. Anyway, further up the order, we see that Nick has unfortunately lost out there to Grant, who is currently now P2. So all the way from P12 to P2, early doors here in Singapore, and we're only on lap 4 of 15. So he's really put the work in at the start. He is, however, yet to pit, so he will need to make a stop. Is it a case of pitting and getting that tyre change on early? It could well be. Strategy is going to play a huge part. Getting out of the traffic here in Singapore can really help you. If you're confident around the circuit at putting in a decent lap, definitely getting out of the traffic and getting on your own strategy will help you potentially in the long run jump some people when they decide to drop into the pit lane. Obviously, if they sit in traffic for a bit longer, that can cause quite a few issues. So get out in some clean air, put some decent laps in, and just race your own race, really. Race the circuit as opposed to the other drivers would be the best piece of advice I could give at this very moment. But anyway, let's look further back down the order as we see there's a little battle pack here with Chatty Duck P6, Mad Max P5 in that Ferrari. Chatty's got to want to try and get a move done as soon as he can, as we see now running down into turn 1. The AlphaTauri dives up the inside of the Ferrari, holds it well, gets the move done. So Chatty Duck up to P5. He's going to want to keep progressing up the order, because remember, he did steal that win from Grant. He would have got himself a few extra points, But we can see there's another virtual safety car now, because that looks to be... In fact, I can't even tell why that is. Is that James Punt? Is that the issue there? Doesn't seem to be. He seems to have dropped back off the field quite a way. It may well be Trem, I want to say, possibly. Unfortunately, we don't actually know why the virtual safety car is out at the moment. Maybe a little moment from Trem there in Sector 3. He hasn't got into the pit lane yet. Don't tell everyone. Of course I'm going to tell everyone. Nick, your mum's watching, so you better put in a good performance, buddy. As we see, he's currently on the gearbox of that Alfa Romeo, so he's going to want to get a move done on Albert as soon as this safety car restart happens. It has now happened. Virtual safety car has ended. DRS is enabled again, so the Red Bull will chase down the rear of Albert in that Alfa Romeo, and currently Grant has got the move done. He's now running P1 as Error 6 retires from the session. Turn, I can't quite tell whereabouts that is. Is that Sector 2, the real tight right-hander where we saw all that damage in at the very start of the race there? It looks like he may have just overshot that moment and gone into the wall there, as we can see the Mercedes buried in the arm code there. So he's obviously missed his braking point, unfortunately for him, and on lap 6 has had to retire. Anyway, let's skip back up to the front of the grid, because we've still got this battle going on between Nick and Albert as we ride off the rear wing, looking straight ahead at the back of that Alfa Romeo. He's going to just sit behind him and hope that Albert maybe makes that mistake. Further back down the order, we can see Chatty Duck has got the move done on Lanocam as well. So in all the midst of this move happening, we've missed what's happening behind, but this is still one of the tightest battles on the circuit at the moment. Just 3/10 separate these guys here, so they're going to be absolutely gunning for it. Nick may want to think about maybe diving into the pits and jumping on the softer compounder tyre if he feels that Albert might be slowing him up a bit too much, just to solidify that podium place, because now he knows that Chatty Duck in that Alpha Tauri is behind him. He knows he will be chasing him down, and with a 3-second bout of clear air, Chatty could be rather quick as Nick dives to the inside there in the Red Bull and gets the move done. Fantastic work there to get the move done on the hairpin. He nicks the DRS from under the nose of Albert, who fights back on the inside line as well. So the Alfa Romeo getting a fantastic drive off of that hairpin and manages to get the position back from Nick, who's just caught napping on the exit of that corner. And unfortunately for him, all that hard effort of getting that move done has not quite paid off yet. So they file down through Sector 3, keeping it nice and steady as they go under the bridge. These tight areas, you can see the curbs really unsettling the car there. If you're not too careful, you put the power down a bit early, you can really unsettle the car. Albert looking a little bit slippery on that softer compound of tyre, and he's going to have to dive into the pit lane now. So Nick will be able to stay out on the medium tyre. He's got clear air, but look behind him. There's Chatty Duck just 8/10 back from the rear end of that Red Bull. So Chatty will be looking to hunt Nick down now and see if he can get right behind Grant and reduce that point deficit that he'll be suffering from this round. Meanwhile, up ahead, Grant has a 7-second lead, but is yet to pit. Let's take a little look then at the pit stop scenario at the minute. So the drivers yet to pit are your top three. So Grant, Nick and Chatty, all three yet to pit. Albert has just pit. Well, obviously we saw him head into the pit lane, so he will rejoin the circuit now, and he will actually rejoin in fourth. So currently it's saying on the timestamp there 26 seconds back. So these guys out in front at the minute, if they keep the pace up, may well actually be able to, Nick may well have actually been able to jump that position in the pit lane. Albert having to pit and Nick getting some clean air to get a better run at this circuit, like we said earlier on. So the medium compound strategy may well have been the way to go, just holding it out there just to try and go for that longer stint. Let's have a little explore further back then, because we can see P8, look, we've got Dunners in his Ferrari chasing down Lanocam in the Renault, and just behind him you can see Butters sitting behind in the Racing Point. In fact, he's really quite close. 4/10 separating the Ferrari and the Racing Point as we speak. Both drivers have, of course, stopped already, so this is racing for position now as they head under, or over the bridge, I should say, and into the tight hairpin and down towards the DRS zone. Dunners, unfortunately, just a little further than he'd have liked to have been off the rear end of that Renault. and now finds himself having to desperately defend from the racing point. Oh, excuse me. All this talking. Need more beer. Anyway, where else have we got battles going on? So we've got some battles going on further up the order. We can see B. Wheeler just up the road in the McLaren chasing down the Ferrari of Mad Max. Chatty Duck now diving into the pit lane as well. So Nick has been relieved of that pressure momentarily. As you can see, Chatty Duck just finding himself now exiting the pit lane, bunched up between this little battle pack here between the Ferrari and the McLaren. McLaren taking a desperately wide entry line there, trying to get the tighter exit to get the DRS out and deploy himself and hopefully slingshot past the Ferrari. It's not going to happen because as we ride on board, you can see he's actually in fact dropped back from the rear end of Mad Max, who's going to try and stick with the Alpha Tauri of Chatty Duck, who then finds himself just 1.5 seconds back from Albert further up the road. As we can look off the rear wing of the Alfa Romeo, you can see all 4 of those cars file round in Sector 2. So Albert now going to be desperate to try and get down the road on those medium tyres as he goes over the bridge down towards the tight left-hand hairpin into the second DRS zone on this street circuit here in Singapore. Chatty Duck then pulling a little bit of a gap out on Max at the minute, so he's doing well to chase down Albert, and that's probably primarily down to the fact that Max is having to defend desperately now from that McLaren behind him. The orange weapon there of B. Wheeler looking like it's very racy indeed. You can see the back end getting a little bit squiddly as they go into Sector 3. It's a very difficult turn this out of the tunnel because it's so easy just to light the rears up and absolutely lick the stamp and send it into a wall. No drivers doing that at the minute, which is good to see, so we get to enjoy this action for a bit longer as they head now down onto the start-finish straight. Wheeler with the DRS opens the wing. Max moves across to the outside to just get that defensive manoeuvre in place and try and cover the line into turn 1. Controls it through turn 2, runs a slight bit wider than maybe he would have hoped, allowing B. Wheeler to stick on his gearbox. Wheeler really closing in there round under the braking zone, and Wheeler now with the DRS once again as they head down towards Sector 2. Will he have enough to do it? He's not quite got the pace on the Ferrari, it would seem, at this point. The DRS zone not quite long enough for him to really grab an advantage. He seemed to be suffering on the exit leading into that DRS zone there a little bit. Maybe he had to brake a little bit early to avoid the rear end of the Ferrari and just drop back a little bit further. It's not looking good for your bet now, is it? No, it's not, T. Keeley. It's not. But there we go. The poll said no, but in actual fact, you can see Grant is actually doing a fantastic job. But meanwhile, up ahead, you can see Nick now has his clean air, but that gap behind, that 26 seconds to Albert, has dropped down, so he's going to want to think about pitting soon before he runs out of time to really do anything on the soft tyre. So he may well have a good momentum at the minute, a good line, and really be focused on that medium tyre, but it may not be the most beneficial thing for him to be staying on it at the minute, because you can see there the rear end just getting a little bit slippery on the exit. But equally, Grant as well is going to have to make his stop at some point soon, although he does currently have around a 30-second gap, really, when you think about it, to the next the stopped driver, which is Chatty Duck, his championship rival. So predominantly at the moment, this could be, once again, Grant, Chatty, 1-2. But look up ahead, because Grant has unfortunately picked himself up a penalty. In fact, let's have a little look at the penalty situation now. So we've got a lot of drivers just running the 3 seconds for track limits, most of that down the rear end of the grid. So nothing to worry about there. There'll be no changes necessarily at the bottom there. But at the top, if Chatty can find himself within 3 seconds of that Williams, he could well snatch that win once again from the championship leader. Let's look then at tyres. Most of these guys have stopped already, and a lot of them on the medium tyre. Grant is on the medium tyre, as is Nick Willis, who will both need to pit. So they will put on the softs, of course, and expect most likely Grant to probably dive in this lap now. As we can see, yes, he does indeed find himself heading towards the pit lane now. So he'll go onto the softer compound of tyre. Nick now filing himself round Sector 3, that rear end looking a little bit slippery once again, as he also decides now is the time to get that stop done. As it, oh, and it's all gone horribly wrong. He's just put it in the pit wall. Oh, it's gutting. I'm going to have to cut away from it, because you can see now that position has gone the way of Chatty Duck, who may well get the run on Grant. Grant now finding himself out of the pit lane. Chatty now 4.9 seconds back, and that is dropping very quick indeed. So unfortunately for Nick, he's going to have to now suffer the loss of time there, and also the loss of time in the pits with a wing change. So that's such a shame for him, because he was driving such a fantastic race. That is the one moment he didn't want to break that concentration spell, because it takes a lot of focus to get this one right. And unfortunately, just for that split second, it's all gone horribly wrong for the Red Bull driver, who finds himself down the order now to P8. Cinematography in the game, it's fantastic. So, yep, the new one is now available, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it is really good. You get some really nice, look, there you go, some really nice helicopter shots there, look for you. That Alpha Tower of Chatty Duck now finds himself just 3.8 seconds adrift from the leader, so both up 11 places, and Chatty almost within that penalty deficit of Grant as well. But yes, you get some, there's plenty of great things to be had. It's fantastic. It's like watching some real life stuff. Anyway, let's have a little look further back. We've got B. Wheeler in the McLaren still battling the rear of Mad Max, who now also has Lanocam for company in the Renault just behind, as we can see them all filing down into Sector 3, this tight section of the circuit, in the closing sections of this race here. Lap 12 of 15 then, as we can see, it is proving quite difficult for that McLaren of Wheeler to surpass the Ferrari of Max. He's doing quite a good job of getting the defense right, but look just alongside Wheeler, because here comes Lanocam in that Renault down the inside into turn 1, very tight indeed, but he gets the move done. Wheeler giving a little bit of space there, not too much. He's going to want to try and hang with that group, but maybe, just maybe, Lanocam up ahead can get a move done on the Ferrari. So now Max can see the pair of them coming for him. He now knows he's going to be under attack from a different angle, because every driver does everything a little bit differently. So what moves can we see Lanocam pull? Because that was a really nice move, really intricate down into turn 1. Is he got anything else in his locker that Mad Max hasn't seen from the McLaren of B. Wheeler yet? So we'll ride on board, and we'll keep with this battle for a minute or two here, and just see how this unfolds. You can just look on the timing screen now. Grant starting to unravel that gap a bit further now, up to 5.5 seconds. These circuits really, obviously we're running the realistic performance here, so Grant in that Williams, the lack of performance not really hindering as much on a circuit like this, where it's tight and intricate and more technical, as much as it would do potentially somewhere like Monza, where you've got the name of the Temple of Speed for a reason, because you just want outright speed and power, because you've got such great straights and such fast corners to play with. So at the minute, although we can just see at the bottom of the screen there, Grant picking himself up another penalty. So now Grant is up to 6 seconds worth of penalties, and the gap stands at just 6.2 seconds. So although it's building, Chatty is now closer than he was before to picking up that win. Let's see if in the next couple of laps Grant can extend that a little bit more, as we see James Punt has retired from the session. Sector 2, Grant will be the first driver round that section of the circuit. I doubt we'll see a safety car this late in the race. Let's see if we can piece together exactly what's happened. He's done very much the same as what Error 6 in the Mercedes has done, because he seems to have just buried it in the Armco there, missing his braking point. Mad Max then up still in third place, defending from Lanocam, has just picked himself up a penalty. So let's have a little look then. Detail on the penalty is a 3-second track limits penalty, but that will of course drop him 2 places. So Wheeler and Lanocam respectively will get that position, so that will promote that Renault up onto the podium, which is such a shame for Max, who's driven a fantastic drive this evening here in Singapore. He's shown a real defensive masterclass against the McLaren, and to be fair, the Renault as well. So That's such a shame for him. He's obviously just pushed a little hard. You can see there's a few points where you can overrun those white lines as they now head down into the hairpin, over the bridge and into the next DRS zone. So we could potentially see a little move here from Lanod. No, he's a bit further back than he would have liked to be. It's quite a deceiving one, this, because the DRS zone not as long as you'd expect it to be. You can't actually build a massive amount of speed. As soon as you hit 8th gear, you're dropping back down to 2nd to get an appropriate speed for that next bend, because it's tighter than you think when you're actually down there and you're driving. So the gap at the front then now up to 8 seconds. So it looks like Grant will indeed have this wrapped up as he heads down to start lap 14 of 15 here, the penultimate lap of this race for him. Looking back down the order, we've got Pressure Mixer in the second of the Renaults now, all over the rear end of Butters in the Racing Point. So around here that Butters not quite excelling as much as he did in the first race, but still picking up the points for his team nevertheless. So Pressing Mixer with the DRS as they head down towards turn 1. DRS wings close, and unfortunately he's not going to be close enough to make a move this time. We've got to remember, as far as championship standings go, for the guys at Renault and Racing Point, this is still quite a close battle. We've got the guys at Renault who are sitting 3rd in the championship, Racing Point just behind them, 89 points. So they're quite a few points adrift, but they're going to want to try and pull on in. But unfortunately, what with Trem down in P9 and Butters P6 currently, they are being outscored by the guys at Renault. The real battle we've got going on here is going to be between Ferrari and Racing Point, because you've got one Ferrari outside of the points currently, but also one potentially sitting on a podium. Potentially. We say this because of the penalties you can see there on the left hand side of the screen. We've got the penalty system up, so we've got 3 seconds track limit warnings. But anyway, let's get that off the screen now, and we will take all of that away and just enjoy the final lap here, because Grant has just begun the final lap of this race as we ride on board as he heads through turns 1 and 2 respectively down towards the first DRS zone. Chatty now 9 seconds adrift, so he won't have enough to do it here unless, of course, we see something. We've seen it before for that one rare time that Grant makes a mistake. I'm sure he'll be very conscious of that now going into this final lap. So Max now comes across the line now to start his final lap with Lanocam right on the tail of him. It looks like Wheeler has dropped back from this pair ever so slightly, so Lanocam just pushing that Ferrari along a little bit. Further back down the order though, we can see Trem is under attack from Albert in the Alfa Romeo. Just 5 tenths separating the two of those as they head down under the bridge to start their final lap. And Dunner's just 1.8 seconds adrift from the pair of them as well. So Albert really looking to push and try and get himself just those extra couple of points for his team, Alfa Romeo. Oh, I can nearly breathe again now, because we can see in the track map there that Grant is now heading down into Sector 3. It's been a race full of excitement, and to be fair, there was a little bit of chaos in turn 1, sorry, not turn 1, turns 3 and 4, and to be fair, turn 1 was exciting as well, watching Era 6 nearly drop the Mercedes around the outside. But here we go, we can see Albert trying to make the move around the outside of Trem. He's got it done, but he runs quite wide there on the exit, so he'll pick up a warning for that, but he's managed to secure the position and just gets it from Albert. Anyway, here we go, your winner here for round 12 of the Slydog Racing League in Singapore goes the way of Grant. P2 goes to Chatty Duck, and it looks like on the road Max will hold P3. As you can hear, probably there's the fireworks going off around the circuit. Unfortunately, I can't get a nice cinematic view of that, but you can see many nice lights flicking around by the sea there. So we can see that Mad Max will unfortunately drop to P4, allowing Lanocam in that Renault to take the final podium spot. Further back down the order then, Butters finishing P7th. 8th goes the way of Nick in the end after a really, really unfortunate fight with the pit wall. 9th goes the way of, it's looking like it's going to be Trem. Albert lets Trem back through, so unless there was an issue there, Albert just letting Trem through in the dying stages, although he seems to be going extremely slow. Dunner's right up behind him now, So Dunner's maybe looking to get a little move done in the final couple of corners. There's contact between the two of them, and that's the Ferrari gone. Last turn of the final lap here. The Ferrari makes contact up the inside of the Alfa Romeo, and unfortunately Dunner's almost binning it completely into the wall there, and ending his race sooner than he would have liked. But there we go. It's race over here for round 12. Once again, last lap bit of action there for you. I like to keep people on their toes and make it a little bit exciting. But round 12 goes the way of Grant. But driver of the day there goes to Chatty Duck. However, you know what? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say it. Driver of the day for me is going to go towards Grant, because it was quite the feat that he had to take on there. And he drove a really commanding race. Even with the penalties, he managed to pick up the valuable seconds. And once again, with the performance deficit, he made a really, really great drive of that. So driver of the day for round 12 goes the way of Grant, who takes victory from starting P12 on the grid. Interesting race, interesting round. In fact, we've had a couple of interesting rounds, what with the wet qualifying in Canada, the lovely dry race with plenty of action involved, and then, of course, here in Singapore. So here are your standings then. We see Grant takes the win for round number 12. P2 on the podium goes the way of Chatty Duck in the AlphaTauri. So still those guys at AlphaTauri and Williams fighting for that Constructors' Championship, as well as these two at the top being championship rivals. Unfortunately, James Punt finishing outside the points for AlphaTauri. P3 goes the way of Lando Cam in the Renault after Mad Max unfortunately picking up a 3-second penalty for track limits, allowing him to then drop to P4. P5 goes to B Wheeler, and 6th to Preston Mixer in the second of the Renault. 7th goes the way of Butters, 8th to Nick Willis in the Red Bull, and 9th to Albert in the Alfa Romeo. 10th and the final points position goes the way of Trem in the Racing Point, and Dunners finds himself finishing P11. Unfortunately, the two final finishes there, 12th and 13th, James Punt and Erisics, both DNFing at identical spots on the circuit, where they obviously just missed their braking point and ploughed into the Armco. Rather unfortunate for both of them, and unfortunate for AlphaTauri there in their quest to close the gap on the Williams boys there for the constructors, because they'd have liked to have both finished in the points. But nevertheless, a good result for them in round 11. And we will see exactly how that leaves it next week. Fastest lap goes to Chatty Duck with a 1:39.6 as well. So let it be said that Grant, although he took the win there, Chatty seemed to have some pace at points around the circuit. It had to be. It had to be. He just won me a beer there, Tom. That's what's happened there, buddy. Anyway, that just about rounds up our Monday evening. So we are next week. Join us again, similar time, 8:20, 8:25, that sort of time on the same channel. You can join us again for rounds 13 and 14, Russia and Spain. So once again, both completely different circuits where, you know, the performance deficit may come into play a little bit more next week, what with Russia being quite a long, drawn-out circuit with a lot of pace required, a lot of higher speed corners, and the same going to Spain as well. So that could be a really exciting week, and maybe we'll see some more mixed up different results. So rounds 13 and 14 next week here at the same time. Remember as well, we've got the Thursday League that runs from this channel as well. So hopefully this week, I think Max was away last week and the week before. I think he's back this week. So you can join us on Thursday for what will be the Thursday Night League. I can't remember what round it's going to be, if I'm completely honest with you. All I know is that it will be in Brazil. So, yeah, it'd be great to have a few of you guys joining Max on that stream on Thursday. Thank you ever so much for your comments. Great commentary. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. And good night, Tom. We'll see you on Thursday as well. So, it'd be great for you to join us. Thanks again for watching. We hope you've had a fantastic night. And we will see you next week for rounds 13 and 14. Cheers.